in escrow. So they can refinance 6 months later when rates come down, and they're not losing that money. So a big thing, if they're doing a standard rate buy down, when they refinance, that money's gone.
So doing the temporary is probably a good
temporary,
strategy.
a 1 year buy down right now is what I'm seeing with clients a lot right now.
Okay.
Even the 2 year, because they know rates are coming down in 2024.
Okay.
So they don't really need the 2 year buy down, but at least a 1 year.
We sincerely hope, you mean we sincerely hope and expect that they more than likely
yes,
will.
more than likely, we can't guarantee.
Because we're not guaranteeing anything.
Yes, not guaranteeing, but if clients want to be safe, you know, the 2-1 buy down's perfect. They have 2 whole years to refinance and get into that lower rate long term.
Is there enough to do that plus help pay for the buyer broker if the buyer doesn't have any money in the seller concessions?
Well, for the temporary buy down, like a 2-1 buy down, you need about 2 to 2.5% concessions. So you'd probably be looking at getting
It depends what kind of loan you've got, right?
Yeah.
If you're looking at buyer concessions and you're doing an FHA loan for a first-time home buyer, we can get up to
6%.
Right, now you got to convince the seller, hey, give me 6%. I mean, so everybody makes it sound easy, and that's why we're doing this class, because it's all, I think you probably all have a good sense of things, right? But then you get down to that brass tacks moment. Well, shit, now what do I do? Right? How am I going to do this? And then there's the fear of what may happen and the reality of what isn't going to happen, right? And so my purpose of today and what I'm hoping to do, and by the way, Sherry, I thought I'd leave that for you to click on to our next things.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Michelle, how do I do that?
Oh, you're going to need spacebar. Spacebar?
Just spacebar?
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, look at that.
Wait, sorry about that. There we go.
Awesome.
Thank you
Okay.
guys for coming.
There we go. So my name is Carl Eisenberg. I've been a licensed realtor here in the Valley for 25 plus years. And I am just like you. Yes, do I have my broker's license? Yes, I do. But I am not your broker. I'm also not a real estate attorney, and I'm not somebody that, pie in the sky, hey, I made $3 million last year. I am in the trenches every day, working and selling. I am in production, okay? Last year I tried to back away from personal production a little bit, and that didn't work so awesome. So I decided, if I want to eat and feed my family, maybe I should go back to work. So I did that. And so we have a small team here at MyHomeGroup. We have, I think, 5 full-time agents, 9 total. We're also part of PLACE, which is essentially an operating system for how teams operate. That's, I guess, based on volume of sales and number of transactions. We're the largest team in America. Goldman Sachs owns about 10% of us. And we're a cog in that wheel, a very small cog in that wheel. So from a disclosure point of view, we have all these names, these Eisenberg Residential, PLACE, MyHomeGroup, Envoy. Envoy and PLACE work together financially, okay? And so what I wanted to talk about a little bit is the fact that a lot of times when you take, this is not a continuing ed class, okay? I am not going to say, hey, according to revised statutes 32-2151.02, I mean, you know how they do that, and you start to write it down, and then you actually never go back to look and read it. I have done a fair amount of research. I do a lot of reading. I'm education-based, but I am a peer. I am your peer. And the reason that I wanted to do this class was I found that I could go to these classes. I mean, like John Dyer, love him. I mean, I love that class. And I could study the buyer broker. And I go, I love this buyer broker agreement. I got to do this. This is, and then I'm like, well, how do I do that exactly? Right? What exactly do I say? Sometimes you got the easiest people in the world, and they say, yes, I'm all in. And then you got people that it's challenging. Or you are afraid to talk about it. Who's been there? Maybe not you guys. You're not sure about the relationship. They want to go see a house, so you show them a house. Then they want to go do this other thing. All of a sudden, because then you forgot to talk about it, and you didn't, quote, have a buyer consultation, all of a sudden, it's a week or 10 days later, and you're like, well, shit. What am I going to do now? Am I going to say, oh, wait, by the way, I forgot to talk to you about how I get paid, and here, can you sign this? That's a little off-putting, right? And so I want to talk about the process, what we do with it. That's fun, but we're not going to do that. But we are going to talk about the buyer conversation. We're going to talk about the seller conversation, and we're going to sit down, and hopefully we can break up into some groups. If you're unless you're all shy, and then we'll just figure it out. But we need a little bit of practice. We got to practice on how we're going to say it, who we're going to say it to, knowing what to say, and we got to say it enough times, right? So the first thing is, for those of you that weren't here as I was stalling earlier, what do you want to get out of today, so that I can make certain that we get it done? Anybody have anything in their minds that they want to accomplish today? Yes, sir.
So, Carl, by the way, we have done deal together before. Anyway.
Was I nice to you?
Oh, you were wonderful.
Okay. That was a close call.
I get it that now that the environment is changing, we need to more than likely get the buyer-broker agreement signed by the buyer for a variety of reasons. But it's kind of hard because when you present that to the buyer, and when he looks at line number 30, where he is supposed to compensate the buyer's agent if certain conditions are not met, it kind of spooks him out.
Got it.
So what's the right script to use so that we can alleviate his fear and still convince him to sign this agreement?
Is that okay?
Mhm.
Right? And don't forget though, if we're really taking to heart the fiduciary of agency, right? I'm supposed to, if I'm your buyer's agent, I have to look out for you, right, and your best interest. So I can't like talk you into something, or here, sign here, and then you don't really understand what you're signing, because then I haven't done my job, have I? So and that's where it gets a little bit tricky, okay? And so we will, thank you, Stan. Thank you, okay? And it comes down to, how do we as realtors get paid? Now, just as a show of hands, okay, who in this room has used a buyer-broker agreement? Okay. Now, who in this room has done a listing agreement, has a signed listing agreement? Okay, all right, so we've got a sense of it. Now, just so I can get a good sense of things, of everyone here, okay, who has been, who's new to real estate? Who's been in the real estate game for less than a year? Got it. 2 of you. Who's been in this, less than 3 years? Okay. Less than 5 years? Less than 10 years? Over 10 years? Okay, gotcha. All right. You guys have my permission. This is interactive, okay? If I'm boring you, I want you to stand up and yell at me, and we'll shift gears. Is that fair? Is that okay? All right. So, I'm gonna make sure we answer that question, and I'm gonna make sure we practice that. Also, if there's anything I missed, or you want to know what I do and how I write it, I'll share anything we've got. There's no hitches, there's no catches. It's just email me or Sherry. We'll give it to you. There is so much business out there. It does not extinguish your flame, my flame, by lighting your candle. It just doesn't. That's bull. Okay. So we're all in this game together. Let me ask you a question. What happens when the seller offers minimal compensation to cooperating agents? Like 1% or $1,000 or $1. Anybody in this room run into that lately? In reality, you have.
Yeah.
And what did you run into?
Well, I'm just glad they didn't like the house.
I had one of those. It was a 1% deal, and I was like, well. And I always, even when it's for sale by owner, even if I'm not going to get paid, I do the right thing. People want to not do the right thing, but I pride myself on being a realtor, right? And so that means they want to see a house, I'm going to show it to them. And I was right there with you, brother, when he's, I hate this house. I'm like, oh, thank God. But I still, because of the fact that my client had signed a buyer broker agreement, and because of the fact that I had a conversation about that, and I explained to them that this might happen, and this is why you're giving me permission to do these things, because in the code of ethics, there's some gray areas there, and there's some things like, when can I negotiate my commission? I can't do it on the contract, so I have to do it outside of the contract. And some people don't even understand some of the rules. Like, can I call up and say, hey, I need more money? I mean, you can do what you can do or not do what you can do, and it's important to know what you can and can't do. But I've gone there. Okay. First off, is it illegal for someone to just say, I'm going to put in the MLS, I'll pay you $1? Is that illegal?
No.
Is it unethical?
No.
Is it improper?
Yes. Depends.
But, yeah, it's a personal. You may have an opinion that it's improper, but the Department of Real Estate and our designated broker, they're not going to say, well, you may feel that way, but it's technically not. Okay, and the reason would be unless that person was doing it without the written instructions of their client. Right? Does everyone here understand that we represent? I'm not going to dive into agency law, but does everyone understand the concept of agency? You get that? And that we can't do anything without written instructions from our client? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And this stuff like the new, things are changing. Things haven't changed. It's been like this for 100 years. Okay? Commissions are negotiable. They've always been negotiable. Nothing's changed. The media's changed. Current lawsuits trying to make it seem like we're travel agents, that it's everything's set and we just get paid. I mean, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be awesome? That would be awesome if that's what. But that's the attorneys and the media. They're not letting that happen. So in this environment, we do have to pay attention to that. Okay. All right. So how can you, as a buyer's agent, enforce your right to compensation in Arizona? There's only two ways. How can you enforce your compensation? How can you do it?
Buyer broker.
That's one of the ways. What's the other way that I can enforce my compensation?
Listing agreement?
But I'm a buyer's agent.
Procuring cause?
Yes, sir. Perfect. Right? Now, procuring cause would be, you can hit that, thank you. Okay? Is when cooperating compensation is offered in an MLS that you belong to. So, I'm a member of Armos, right? I'm right here. Here's where I'm at. But then I have a client that's in Prescott. It's not, the listing's not listed in our MLS, it's listed in that MLS. But I'm still an Arizona realtor. And if they offer compensation in that MLS, I'm entitled to that compensation, correct?
Mm-hmm.
No. Mm-mm. No. That's where we need to have written, when that stuff happens and whenever this happens, you got to get to that broker to broker conversation, and say, listen, I want to get paid. Can I get paid? I like to get paid. With procuring cause, does anybody have does anyone here want to bring up, what does that mean to you? When we say, you got to have procuring cause, what's that mean?
If you actually show them the property, right, you take them over there, you open that door, then you have procuring cause on that particular property that you showed.
Like, you are the reason
Yes.
that those people are interested in that property because you procured that buyer to that property. Exactly. There's always can be gray areas to that. And proving that is not always the easiest thing to do sometimes. And then that's when our brokers and attorneys have to get involved, and it's messy. It's a whole lot easier to have a meeting of the minds and just get paid. When our buyers, who has buyers right now? Who's working with buyers right now? Do any of those buyers, do your buyers, like late at night, scroll on Zillow and Redfin and look at homes and then notice that there may be an open house and then maybe go to the open house and say, hey, I went to this house, I really love it, I think we want to buy it? Has anyone had that happen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Has anyone had a conversation with their clients prior to that fact on how they should manage themselves in an open house and what they should do?
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you guys think? Give me some examples.
Don't go without me.
Yeah, but
Or
They do.
let
Yeah.
the agent doing the open house, let him know or let her know that you're working with an agent actively.
yeah, that's great too.
Or that my
Absolutely.
agent actually sent me here to see this house.
Or give them my business card.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. All those are great tools, and that helps deal with that procuring cause conversation. And if you've trained your buyer well enough, then when they know about it, and you want to go, right? Except you've got 5 other people that you're dealing with. You can't. And oh, by the way, you happen to be in North Peoria, and they want to go to friggin', Queen Creek. Which is fine, but you prefer not to go from here to there, and in fact, you don't even want to go there, but you want to make sure that you can put a deal together. So that's when I have a standard email template that we simply send out, and I reach out to the listing and the co-list agent, and I say, hey, we got some buyers that are going to pop by tomorrow. Maybe they won't pop by. That's where having auto searches with your open houses. This is all about buyer agency and recognizing how do we get paid, but it all comes back down to what are we going to do. Now, what if you're a listing agent? How do you enforce your compensation?
Listening to that.
Listing agreement, and that's it. And then, that's because that's all that is. That's all that you've got. So.
Oh, were you done there?
Yep, close enough. We talk about what's normal and what's standard, and we're not supposed to do that. And really it makes sense, right? And you have to decide, and no one can tell you. You have to do your business plan, you have to look at your compensation, and you have to decide what you're worth. And what is the number that you're unwilling to work below? Who here has done a deal where they reduced their commission? It'd be nice to say, oh, I don't do that, but sometimes you're like, well, $20,000 is better than nothing. $5,000 is better than nothing. Or, I created, maybe I'm selling their house, and then they're going to buy a house, and they want to have that sense of, let's make a deal. And sometimes you have to do it. So there's no wrong answer to this. I personally have made a decision, because I had to think about this, because I need to practice what I preach. And I said, it's different when you have let's say it's a referral situation, or something where you never left your desk. I had a couple of those last week. Never left my desk, and I'm getting paid. That was fun. I like that, right? But if I'm going to get out of my chair and I'm going to go and look at work property, or I'm going to go spend marketing dollars, and I'm going to do different things, what is the least amount that I'm willing to work with? I got to know that. And I've said to myself, I will not do a deal for less than 2%. I just won't, no matter what. Your deal may be completely different, and there's nothing wrong with that. For example, there's some very valid models out there where here's the menu, right? It's a menu. It's just choose your entree, right? This is what I'll do, and there's nothing wrong with presenting your practice in that way. There's nothing wrong with you can say, I'll charge you $500 to do this, and you can get all creative things now. Everything you got to make sure when you do that, you check with who here is with MyHomeGroup, and anybody outside of the brokerage here? Okay. So whoever your broker is, you better make sure that you're doing what they agreed to, because even though we all know we're doing our own business and doing it, we legally are underneath the umbrella of our designated broker, and we got to obey our designated broker. Have to. And it makes them a little unhappy when you don't. So let's not do that. But you got to figure that out. So everything that I'm going to talk about today makes an assumption that you have figured out what you're worth. You got to know. You can always ask someone's opinion, what do you do? I'll share what I do, and other people share what they do. But you have to know. And you got to feel it in your soul, and you got to be committed to it.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yes, sir.
So what is your minimum wage, or what are you worth? So let's say you have not gotten a buyer broker agreement signed by the buyer.
Okay?
And then you agree to show him houses, and if the house offers the seller offers $1,
Okay?
you're obligated to still show him the house. But, and this is, by the way, coming straight from Commissioner's mouth. But if you have got it signed, then the buyer will be responsible to pay the difference, whatever you agreed on the agreement.
Correct.
So that's another reason to use the agreement.
Absolutely. Now also, let's say you didn't get a buyer broker done. You didn't do all that, and they're only going to pay $1, and you know you're obligated to do the right thing because you're showing them the house. You know, at what point though do you have to do all the work? Are you forced to work?
Yes, if you didn't get it signed, you are forced to work. You can't say no because commission cannot dictate the sale of the house or the purchase of the house.
Right. That once again, that's a broker question because when you look at our U.S. Constitution, I can't be forced to work for no money. So there is a legal issue that says that now I can't not show you the house. That's for certain.
Right.
Okay. That is no discussion on that. I can't do the basic minimum of agency. Okay. But talk to your broker. Okay. And I would, there's one right there. Okay, maybe we could ask Todd what he thinks about that if he ever comes in here. But the question would be, can I walk away from the relationship? That's a good. Hey Todd, I have a question that is better for your answer than mine.
Oh.
I represent a buyer. Okay, I did not get a buyer broker signed.
Uh-oh.
I did not do the things that I did. We went out to show homes. I agreed to show them homes. We're showing them a home. They fell in love with the house. It's fantastic, and they're going to pay me $1. Okay, I'm going to do the right thing, but I decide I don't want to do that work. At what point can I quit?
Yeah, that's tough. They don't have a buyer agreement, which means they're not really your client yet. And we talk about that all the time. Like I've spent the last 3 months showing this client homes, prospective client, right? Client by definition would mean they're under contract with us, and they're either under contract on a purchase or they're under contract in an employment agreement, just like a listing contract would be. So, we don't really talk about sellers this way. I've talked to them.
Have you noticed he's dancing? This is a great dance, Todd. I love this dance.
That's what I'm saying. I've talked to my neighbor 3 times in the last 3 months about possibly listing his house. You would never call them a client, right? Because they're really not yet. But in this situation, fiduciary duties is what you're really talking about, and we can't abandon our fiduciary duties to a client. Loyalty is the biggest one, probably, and it's not being loyal to abandon them. But if they're technically not a client yet, and they're not under contract yet, you would be able to, right?
So that's where it gets sticky.
Yeah,
okay,
for sure.
and that would be that if hopefully you figured out that they're only paying $1, and you better have a conversation that says, hey, by the way, we got a little bit of a challenge because I'm not going to get paid. I'd really like to, before we go look at homes, can we go through what I'm doing so you can decide if we can work together or not?
Yeah.
That would be the way to handle that. Because if you decide and you don't realize it until you pull out and you go to, let's say you're still on athenosine, okay, and you hit that and you're going to bring everything in, and you at that one point realize that, well, I'm writing an offer and I'm not going to get paid. I would say in that case, you're stuck.
Yeah.
You're stuck because you've already given that implied agency that you're going to help them, that you're going to do those things. So it's important that you pay attention to this stuff. Now, I think it's inappropriate. You can't say, the question also would be, well, he's here, because I would not have answered this, but since he's here, what if I'm doing all that, okay, and they haven't signed a buyer broker agreement, and I sit down with them, and they go, well, let's play it by ear, okay, I'm sure we'll work something out. I don't want to sign this just yet. I want to think about it, and they went to see a house, and we noticed that it's only a $500 compensation, and but if I've got them, I've implied that agency, I can't hide that piece of paper from them. I got to show it to them. But I could probably, since they haven't agreed, I say, look, we were going to put it off. We got to do it right now. But you can't be halfway pregnant, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Well, I just one thought that comes to my mind, which we say all the time, is maybe you can write these on the board, but it's kind of like the ABC.
Yeah, it's like inviting a vampire into the room, right? It's like
well, the ABCs of real estate are start with R, representation. We always have to have that talk first. You have to get an agency disclosure signed anyway. You know, we require it for every deal. It's supposed to be pre-contract. But instead of looking at it as like, oh, I gotta get that stupid form signed, it talks about if you hire me to represent you, we sell representation on houses, you get the carload of care. You get this, confidentiality, disclosure, loyalty, all those things. Use that to show your value, because you have to do it anyway. And if you turn around as part of that and also bring out the buyer advisory, the opening paragraph in that 13-page buyer advisory says a real estate agent is vital to the purchase of real estate, right? Not only do we help you find the home and we help you win the bid, but we also guide you through that escrow maze. That also shows you your value. And then inevitably, buyers just want to see houses, right? You're going to come across when you're going to go, oh, look, this one has a $1 code. That's what we used to say. Oh, look, this one has no code, Roby. I just laugh out loud. I hope you don't want this house, but if you do, we have to talk about compensation. The second word, the R is representation. The next word is compensation. We have to talk about it. What contractor would you ever call to come out and look at your AC that you wouldn't be expecting to have to pay for their services, right? I mean, we just have to get beyond this whole, I'll work for you for free because someone else is going to pay me over there. You know what I mean? Like, we got to start bringing
And I believe
yeah.
that you're teaching a true class
Yes.
on buyer broker agreement.
A new one
It's
I just wrote.
CE, okay? So you also you'll get additional credits for it, continuing credits for you, and you're going to dive into everything about the buyer broker.
Yeah.
Is that
I
correct?
feel like a guest on like the Jimmy Fallon
Yeah.
show. You're plugging my new
That's
movie
exactly
or my
right.
new
That's
CD
right.
or something,
That's right.
Compensation, Carl, you can use a K if you want. Go ahead.
But what my point is, okay,
And then transaction.
my point is, okay, that if we're going to go down this road, which is incredibly important, and we can't do business without that class, okay? But this is, what we only have a certain amount of time today, okay, is
We'll
we're
be done
gonna,
by 5 o'clock.
I'm gonna make,
Or you all me out of here by 6 at the latest.
which is gonna frustrate my managing broker, is I'm gonna say, I'm gonna make the assumption that you already get all that. You understand all that. It's clear. But what you really want, and each one of those things, I mean, the listing agreement in and of itself is a huge CE class. Just that one thing. The buyer broker, it's so important, okay? But today, what I was hoping to focus on is, I get that. I'm going to take the class, okay? I'm going to be an expert. And Carl's not a broker, not an attorney, but he does have bullshit skills, okay? And what we're going to talk a little bit about is that relationship conversation and some of the things that we can do to get them to the point to where we bring out that buyer's advisory. And yes, sir.
Million questions, but one that stands out the most here is, in that situation, let's just say you're out showing someone.
Which one?
So it pays $1. Okay.
You represent the buyer.
Represent the buyer.
No buyer broker agreement signed or is signed.
Is signed.
Great.
Okay. So let's just say if buyer broker agreement says 2.5%. You've got a first time home buyer who depends on down payment assistance.
Okay.
Literally has $3,000 in their account. They're going to need every bit of that $3,000. So now, how are you going to get compensated? Try to enforce this buyer broker agreement.
So you're the first time home buyer. I'm you. Okay. So that I understand this, and I thank you so much for going through and meeting with your lender, and we have a clear understanding. And look, we've got you pre-approved for this down payment assistance. Isn't that great? Now you've taken the class, right?
Yeah.
So you get it, right? And what we're going to need is that seller to support this process. Do you understand that? I also need to talk to you about the fact that I need to make a living. Okay, and this is how I
don't
do
work
that.
for free.
Okay, and so sometimes we may run into situations where I can't get paid, you can't get the house, the seller won't cooperate with us. Does that make sense? No?
No.
Fantastic. So you have down payment assistance. You want the seller to give you down payment assistance. Just so you know, if you want my help, okay, you gotta have this conversation with them.
Yeah.
You gotta have the conversation with them. And just, the question is that if the seller's not gonna work with us, okay, and they're not gonna pay compensation, okay, and I've got, our broker has agreed to some language. If you flip over the buyer broker I gave you, you can see my language that I added in there. But it's essentially giving me, you have to give me permission to go out there and negotiate so that we're understanding what I'm doing. Because maybe what we do is yes ma'am?
No, go ahead.
Okay, maybe what we do is we negotiate a price and we can get that seller to agree, okay, that we can add concessions in addition, because if you're FHA, depending on where we're at on this, okay, and from those concessions that the seller gave, they can pay. That's allowed. Okay, maybe we have maybe they were like, no, here's my bottom line, and maybe they've got a great price, right? So maybe what we have to do is negotiate their bottom line net, because the seller's not as sophisticated as you, doesn't understand the intricacies of buying a home like you do. You've gone to the class, you know these things. But maybe we can get that seller to agree to a price. And also, by the way, I'll get them to agree that once we agree on that price, that they're going to allow us to do an addendum increasing the purchase price. And the difference of that increase in the purchase price is going to be a concession that allows me to get paid. Now that's complicated. And it may or may not work. And it may not even appraise. But there has to be a the rubber's meeting the road now, okay? You're going to see those listing agents out there doing that as a selling proposition. List your house for $990. Isn't that what it is?
Yes.
It's a limited agent. It's like, they figured out a formula where they can make money for $990. I'll bet you that part of that doesn't mean that they're staging the home and spending all this marketing. They've said, here's my menu of options. You can do this, or you can do this, or you can do this, or for this amount of money you can do this, and I can assure you you're going to make more money. So I think we have to talk more and more about that in each particular situation, and we have to actually be specific, and we have to practice our scripts on that.
Let's make that one step worse. What if it's a VA buyer? They're prohibited from paying commissions.
Yeah.
Can't even do it. So that one is another one, right? Flip the script once for a minute and I'll get out of your hair.
That's not going to happen.
What do sellers want?
More money.
The most money with the least amount of hassle. Thank you, Russell Shaw, right?
Right, it's true.
nohassellisting.com. Say that real fast 3 times. But my thought is, what seller that doesn't want the most amount of money wants you to shrink the pool of buyers available to them? So, I don't want to pay a co-broke fee, and the law says I don't have to. Okay, there went all the VA buyers. Do you really have a thing against veterans? Because I actually have a heart for veterans. Know what I mean? There went all the first-time home buyers with down payment assist and whatnot, right? Because they don't have the money for the down payment or the closing costs, let alone commissions on top. And there just went another handful of buyers in general. Do you really want to limit the pool of buyers? So we can talk all about the lawsuits, we can talk all about the crap, but at the end of the day, all we need to do is have a conversation with the seller. You all just went through this a few years ago with Open Door and OfferPad, right?
But the question was, he was representing a buyer.
He was.
Now I can't, as a buyer's agent, talk to the seller.
No, for sure. Well, I guess I'm just injecting a little bit in terms of hope and faith.
There you go.
That we don't have to worry. If you're working with buyers, yes, we always should have gotten a buyer broker. That's not new. We always should have, because if you didn't want 2.5, maybe you wanted 3. You needed a buyer broker agreement to get 3 in a 2.5 world. Now you need it because it's a 2% world. It's going to 0, whatever. But I guess at the end of the day, let's talk about sellers. Think about sellers. What seller in their right mind that wants maximum dollar doesn't want a maximum pool of buyers? And in order to do that, they're going to have to. They're going to want to offer a broker. You know what I'm saying? Have that conversation.
And that is critically important. Yes, sir.
So question. So in regards to, you're saying in regards to lawsuits, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's on everybody's mind, right?
Yep.
Like this is kind of a problem,
Yeah.
especially if you work with a lot of buyers. So to your point, this is something as a listing agent, so the good listing agents out there are gonna have these conversations.
They're gonna have that
And
conversation.
they're gonna say, look, this lawsuit might have said whatever it said.
You don't have to do this
Yeah.
anymore, but you're going to want to do this.
You're going to, and that's what I'm saying. So it really comes
Help
down
me
to
help
like,
you.
what are they gonna do, right? And so I think that's an important conversation, again, that you need to explain to the buyers from the get-go.
Yeah.
Hey, in a lot of cases, they're probably gonna offer me a co-broke, right?
Yep.
But just know, there might be those that aren't gonna pay me, and this is why this particular buyer-broker agreement is super important.
Right.
Because if that's the house that you want, then I have to find a way to be able to negotiate this with that seller, which might mean that we might have to kick the price up, or whatever it is, in order to pay my compensation.
And what you just described there was a FSBO for the last 2 decades. You were working with a buyer, they just want to see houses. What about that one right there? It says FSBO. Yeah, that's somebody selling their own house. Let's go talk to them. There's not any compensation on that deal. It's not on MLS. You had to have the talk. And you had to go to the seller first and say, I got a buyer who loves this floor plan in your neighborhood. Are you willing to pay me an unrepresented seller comp agreement? Because out of a duty to my buyer, I had to ask the FSBO seller first. He says, no way, I hate realtors. Get off my lawn. Okay, fine. I'll go talk to the buyer about my fee, and if he's willing to sign an agreement to that, then we'll bring you an offer tonight. Know what I mean? We've had to have this conversation for 3 decades. It's no different now, except now we gotta have it with everybody. Guess what? That's a good thing for you.
It is. And let's be realistic, guys. There was a raise of hands. 3/4 of the house, and you have a question.
I do. How often are you seeing this here in our state? Are you seeing it a lot
Buyer
right now?
agreements?
Yeah. No,
Well-
like people wanting to get on, jump on, and we're not paying buyer agreements.
I mean, we're
No, I
gonna,
think what she, stop me if I'm wrong.
So
I think-
are we seeing it different? Because I know it's all over, blown up in the news and everybody. And how is Arizona reacting to that? Like I have buyers right now, and we're okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not running into that. Are we running into
You're
that
talking
here?
about how many listings am I running into that
Yes.
are paying,
Yes.
that are offering a very low co-broke? Is that what
Yes.
you're saying?
more
Yes.
and more each day.
Okay.
And it will continue to be a trend. The good news we have is a lot of listers, and again, this isn't a Russell Shaw commercial, but like Russell or, people like that, Beth Ryder, they're the highest producing agents in town. They do 400 deals a year. They will learn this message about, oh, seller, you don't want to do that. That's ridiculous. You want to offer this. The better they are, and we all are as listing agents, the smaller this problem is for selling agents. And the listing agents will get it done, believe me. There's classes everywhere. Hopefully they take mine. The message is going to be, do a better job as a listing agent educating your client, and this problem is smaller than it is right now. Even though they can choose no co-broke, they're not going to, right? They're not going to want to. But if they do, okay, fine. What Carl just said, you got to tell that buyer up front, hey, listen, we might come across a home that knocks your socks off, but we got a seller that doesn't want to cooperate with you on your down payment assist, seller financing, seller concession, with me, broker fee, and guess what? We might have to eliminate that home from the list of possibilities. It's just reality. It's like pool, no pool. It's like busy road, no busy road. It's just going to be one more we're going to have to strike through. So it's making your job harder as a selling agent.
Okay, so that's one more question. So to that point, right, is it okay to have that conversation with that buyer and say, hey, if they're not gonna pay me and you don't have the money to pay me, then we don't go see that house?
Well, you can't make that decision, right? Unfortunately, loyalty comes back into play again. I have to show my buyer every house they want to see, regardless of what the compensation is.
But this is how because he's the man, right?
Yeah.
So, sorry, Todd, but this is how I would manage that, okay? Because once again, I've got bullshit skills, right? I'm going to say, absolutely, we're going to go see this house, and just so you know, okay? And then I'm going to bring up my buyer broker conversation, and I'm going to say, hopefully, we've got a talented listing agent on the other side, and you've given me permission to have a conversation with them. Mm-hmm. The reality is, when we go there, if they're not willing to give, we got a really serious problem, because I won't work for anything less than X, whatever you decided. Okay, and so and then a lot of times, if they're loyal, they're going to screw them. But there's nothing wrong with having that conversation. You have to have that conversation with your buyer. Have to. And when you look at the listing agreement we got here, how many times were you going through the listing agreement, you're paraphrasing it, oh, by the way, we do this, and you know what, I'm thinking that maybe we offer them 2.5%, I mean, what do you think? Great, write it down, done, move on. Those days you can't do that, okay? You have to have, right here, okay, on lines 47 to 50, no, that's a rental, okay? 41 to 44, okay? You've got to have a come to Jesus conversation.
It's a meaningful conversation.
Meaningful conversation, yes. That's sorry.
That's
See, it's nice to have a managing broker here. He corrects me. It's awesome.
That wasn't a correction, that was a supplement.
It was an addendum.
Yeah, it was an add-on to what you said.
Todd, a follow-up question.
Yeah, sure.
On what you just said. So, how many sellers are offering $0 or $1 or extremely low amount? Okay, so now there are-
432
More
as
than
per last
there
night.
was before.
I'm just kidding.
Okay.
He doesn't know.
So there are 4 states where buyer broker exclusive agreement is mandatory.
Mhm.
Do you know the trend? I don't know what those 4 states are, but do you know the trend where in those states the sellers are offering very little to nothing and buyers pick up the cost? Do you know anything?
No, but I think the second part of my class, and it might be part of Carl's because I don't know the outline for this meeting today, but is that the argument is going to be in order to earn a co-broke fee, regardless of who pays it, you really have to have demonstrated representation and what we kind of call the standard of care to the buyer. You know what I mean? Think about a new build, for example. You go out, maybe they even saw the model and signed in as Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, and then you went back with them, and then suddenly the builder takes over and writes up everything. What did you really do on that deal to earn 3% or 2.5%? You know what I mean? And so the argument's going to be that if they didn't hire you, and you didn't discuss agency, and you didn't walk them through the 13-page buyer advisory, and you didn't go out and look at the house with them, and you weren't there for the walkthrough, and you didn't help them cross the Binzer Bridge, you didn't earn the 3 or the 2.5 or the 2, right? So there's the underlying argument is and always has been, get a buyer agreement, have them consciously hire you to represent them, so later when they come and say, well, you didn't do anything to earn that money, I want that money back. They say, oh, no, you mean you hired them to do a job for you, you know what I mean? So having the agreement now is becoming more important than just the money piece. Now it's the right to keep the money.
And my point,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and my point to this, okay, is that agreements are great, okay, but if it's just a piece of paper, it's just a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And if you haven't done like, for example, if you're a realtor, let's say you're a realtor, you're in the Navy, okay? But if you're really skilled at what you do, man, you're SEAL Team 6. I need this room to be SEAL Team 6.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, when we go after this, imagine this really sophisticated listing agent that is offering a 1% co-broke, and then he puts in the prior remarks, any buyer broker any buyer agent that has a signed buyer broker and wants to negotiate a higher commission, the seller is open to that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be goofy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why not be prepared for that?
Right.
Right? How many times if someone saw that today, they would say, well, what do I do? But I mean, that's like, why not be more aggressive on the listing side and teach your sellers the way the world is working, and explain to them that if there's a buyer agent that really knows what they're doing, you're going to want them to represent that buyer, and you probably should pay them for it, so long as they provide a buyer broker agreement. I mean, you could be, I don't know that I would do that, because it would really push away 80% of the real estate agent base, because they don't read everything anyway. But I'm just saying that that'd be a fun conversation to have, right? So
Let me share this with you a little bit from the broker hotline or the broker email. Two conversations last week with agents who've been working with a buyer for X number of days or weeks or months that got a little overzealous, like buyers do, right? They got their phone in their pocket and they're looking at houses right now without you. Redfin, whatever it is, right? And of course, Redfin's deal, pay an agent a small salary because we want the commission as a broker. They empower their people that give you the whole touch right here and meet you in 5 minutes, right? They'll run out. First thing you're going to do is run out, open lock, and show you the house, right? Doesn't matter if you spent 6 months with them. If you didn't have a buyer agreement, are they your client?
No.
No. Who now has procuring cause on this house for this buyer?
Right.
The one that ran out and showed it to them. So if you're not showing your buyers immediately the houses they want to see, you're going to lose a lot, right? Now, if we turned around and called that rep to an agent and said, wait a minute, we have a signed buyer agreement. Your agent is interfering with our client. You need to get out of the way. We're going to go show the house this afternoon. We're going to write the offer. We have an argument, right? But both agents, when I said, do you have a buyer agreement? Well, no. But I've spent 6 months in the car. Doesn't matter, right? It sucks for us. We don't really have an argument in that situation. Here's the answer. Okay, we'll call that client back and tell them, I'm sorry you pushed the button on the app, because now, if you want to buy that house, you're going to have to work with them. And if that doesn't work out, boom, then come back to me and we'll talk. But before we see any more houses, we're going to sign a warrant. I'm going to need, and don't say I'm going to make you sign a buyer agreement. My broker requires. We're going to discuss a buyer agreement. I'm going to need you to hire me to represent
So
you.
let me ask you a question.
But before you do, I do have one question.
Yes,
on
yes.
what you guys are talking about. So in the event, like what you were talking about, where let's say somebody offers 1%, but they're willing to negotiate, is that still done through concessions?
I think it can be done a variety of ways.
Well,
But first off, what I would do, first thing I do, and the whole class is asking you this question, Todd. Todd? Would you?
Get a seat.
Todd, would you like us to have all of our buyers sign a buyer broker agreement?
yeah.
Okay, so the first part of that conversation is, my brokers asked me, okay, do you require me? Hey, Todd, would you mind if I ask you to ask me if I require? I mean, would you do that?
Can't say I require it.
Damn it. Okay, so you have to be careful on that, but it's just like.
But that could be your personal requirement. Before
I
I
have
spend
to-
a month of Sundays in a car with you,
Yes.
my personal, policy, my duty to my family might be for me to make your search a priority. I need
So
you
one
to
way,
formalize our
and we're going to come back to whatever you want, but my point on that, okay, because it's all about the contract, sign the contract, sign the contract. What we have to talk about is how do I get them to the point to where they're eager to sign that, right? And the conversation has to be something along the lines of, my managing broker asked me very persuasively and frankly kind of sternly, but he did ask that I get every single one of my buyers to sign a buyer broker agreement. And because I'm a professional and I consider myself to be frankly the best of the best, I make certain, and it is a requirement of mine, that if I'm going to do the best for you, that I've gone through a consultation with all of my buyers, and that if they choose to work with me, they sign the buyer broker agreement. Does that sound okay?
Yep. I want to share one last thing on the IR file.
See, now this would be a fun drinking game.
Yeah.
Do you think, Todd, this will be the last thing Todd says? I would say no way.
If I show up the very first meeting to see a house, because isn't that what it is? Buyers want 3 things. They want to see houses, see more houses, right? We're going to start calling you see more after the 3rd or 4th outing, right? And I show up at the very first house and say, meet me out front. There's something I wanted to talk about first. What's the first thing I'm going to show them? An agency disclosure. It's a 1-page thing. In the bottom right-hand corner, it says it's not an employment agreement. I'm going to explain to them that if we decide to work together, if you decide to hire me, and we're just here today to see a house. I'm a volunteer agent at the moment, right? But if you decide to hire me, I owe you this carload of care. I owe you these duties. I'm going to need you to sign this. Get people in the habit of signing things you present them with. Is this a contract? Nope, not at all. This is a disclosure that every broker in every city in Arizona requires.
You use the word require.
That one, I would say yes to. And then maybe we go out tomorrow and we see 3 more houses and you say, here you are with your clipboard again. It doesn't have to be a clipboard, it could be your iPad or whatever it is. I'm a little old school. And it's a buyer advisory. 13 pages of all the things you should know before you even are under contract on a house. And that opening paragraph is that I am vital to you. Like heart and lungs, right? Serious. My stock's going up and I'm getting you in the habit of pulling out a pen and I'm going to need you to sign this too, right? I'll go ahead and say my broker requires it, Now I've got 2 things signed by you that are not a contract. I've met you 3 times at houses you wanted to see. I'm professional, I'm knowledgeable, I'm hopefully likable, right? Don't shake your head. I gotta enforce policies around here, that makes me the bad guy sometimes, but I'm a nice person.
I'll pay you for that later.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm taking it out of you.
Okay.
But I guess what I'm saying is by the third time, and it's gonna happen more and more now, almost be glad that when it does, oh look, the co-bro fee on this one is 0. Remind me to talk about that later. Go ahead and check out the backyard if you hate it. And so all of a sudden now, I'm gonna say, you know what? Before we go any further, let me ask you a couple questions. Have I shown you all the hoses you want to see? Did I introduce you to a lender to get pre-qualified? Have I answered all your questions? Did I explain agency to you? Did I give you a 13-page writer? Have I done all that? Well, then what are you waiting for? Let's formalize our agreement right now. Because I don't want to come across the next house and have to make this conversation awkward and all these old things. You know, the last 5 houses we've seen had a 2% co-bro fee. Let's ink the deal at 2%. You don't want to hire me for 3 months? How about for 3 days? And then we'll talk again. I mean, whatever it is. But I think you move for the buyer agreement later, not at the first meeting. You got to show yourself some value first, right? Your AC goes out in July. Sorry, that makes some of you just crazy. But you got 3 people to come out. If you're lucky, you got 1. But, you know, and they all gave you a bid. But which one did you hire? The lowest bid, the nicest person, the one that had the best looking truck? I don't know, the tool bag thing? Whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Show your value and use the right opportunity. And that's what Carl's class is about, is the conversations. You call it BS, but I call it persuasion, right? Convincing. That's what we got to do, is put ourselves in a position to convince them to want to hire us.
So, let's go.
You wouldn't hire an attorney or a CPA without signing an agreement.
No, you wouldn't.
So why should we be any different?
You shouldn't be. And a listing is the same thing. And you guys have been doing listings for years. This is really no different than a listing. You went and saw the house, you walked around, you met the owner, maybe you came back, you ran a few comps, you said, hey, before we go any further, I'm going to need you to hire me. We're going to need to formalize this arrangement. You've all done it. Hundreds of times. It's the same thing now.
And there's 2 issues. 1, are we getting them to sign it? And 2, what happens when they sign it and then we're up against a situation that's not tenable for that buyer? 2 separate challenges out there.
Yeah, for
That
sure.
was going to be my question. Like,
Right.
what if you do run into that scenario? You have the agreement signed, and then the house that they like has maybe $1 compensation, VA, and it's really the one that they want, but you know that you can't work for that. That puts them in a position. So,
Well, I think
you refer it out. I mean, how?
this is what I'll tell you what I would do, okay? And then Todd can chime in on what we have to do, okay? But my point is, that's where I'm moving to this conversation. I've got the buyer, you all have a copy of the buyer broker. You've all seen the buyer broker agreement, correct?
Hey, I don't have a complete one.
Oh, you don't?
I got like a first page.
Oh, there's a second page out here.
Okay.
I think they were made 2 pages for some reason.
All right.
Yeah, someone handed me one.
Second page is a really important one, okay? But the reality is, let's say you scripted and dialogued this thing and they just signed away, right? And
Guess that was a
then
listing contract.
we just walked into the situation that you both came up against, which is like, I can't do that, right? Well, you really need to have, now, let me ask you, the people that have buyers and that are working with buyers, how many of you have had the opportunity to do a buyer consultation at some point? And do you have a standard that you have, that this is how I represent a buyer? This is what I do. Does anybody have that?
Working on it.
Okay, so that's it. We just hit the nail on the head, okay? This is homework, and only you can do it. I can show you what I do till I'm blue in the face. Todd can dance around and talk about, oh, let's do this. But until you clearly have a standard of care that you will present over and over again to your buyers that you feel great about, you got to feel good about it, it's not going to work. Because you will end up in a situation where you didn't have the conversation, or maybe they just signed something, and then you have these poor VA buyers whom you love. They love you, and now you've got a house they want to buy, and now I don't think there's that many of those out there.
No.
Okay? Because a listing agent that's got half a brain is not going to offer a no compensation on a VA home. I mean, that's just crazy, but they might. So the thing is, you've got to have a consultation with that buyer. You've got to talk to that lender, right? And you've got to say, okay, the market has changed a little bit. There may be a situation that we run into where you have a dream home,
a buyer agreement for 3, but we came across that no co-broke fee. You know, you're gonna have to empower us to talk to the listing agent and say, listen, I can see, you know, my buyer's interested in your listing, he's a VA buyer, I got a buyer agreement, but it doesn't do me any good, because the law won't let him pay a commission, right? But he really loves your house, you know, would your seller be open to 10,000 over list, right? I mean, subject to appraisal and stuff, of course, right? In exchange for offering us a co-broke fee of, let's say it's 3, right? You know, in other words, that can be looked at as a seller concession right now, and unless lenders make a huge adjustment to all their things, anything the seller pays for the buyer or on behalf of the buyer is going to be a concession. So that's the question we have out to Envoy and VIP and some of the others is, you know, if the seller offers to pay a buyer broker fee, you know, in addition to anything else, is that going to be looked at as a concession? And so far the answer is yes. Right?
Do you all have the second page of the buyer broker thing that we
That's a challenge.
Look
It's
at
going to be
that.
a challenge.
It's our time.
Do you see, look at what I wrote. I'm not saying that that's what you should do. Can we go over what I wrote? Okay.
Would you do an addendum, or would you ask them, like you said?
Well, so that would end up being an amended commission agreement. Remember, that's an agreement between us and the listing broker, not between the buyer and seller. So you can't just throw in the contract that seller agrees to pay the selling broker 3%. That doesn't work, because that deal is between them and the buyer, right? So it would have to be prior to the offer, then it would have, or with the offer, it would be our amended commission agreement. Contrary to what you're showing on MLS, 0.
So
You're gonna make it 2, 3, whatever it is, right?
So what I wrote, based upon brokers telling me that over and over again, okay, is this, first off, to me, okay, I don't want to work with them, and they don't want to work with me. You don't have to put this is what I put, okay? This contract may be terminated at any time by either party with written notice to the other prior to, okay, presentation or acceptance of purchase contract. But you can't fire me after I'm presenting the offer. I mean, you got to do it before then, okay? And, all right, buyer shall not be responsible for compensation to buyer broker so long as co-broke listed in the MLS is 2% or higher. That may be unacceptable to you. You may say, no, it's got to be 3, it's got to be 4. I'm not going to work for a buyer unless they pay me 5. There's no wrong answer. It's what you say. That's just what I say.
What's on page 1? 3?
Great.
Okay, so you're saying I'm willing to reduce it to 2,
Yes.
and if that's how it works out.
That's just me, okay? And then I say, buyer hereby instructs agent, that's me, okay, to attempt to negotiate a 3% buyer broker fee or allow a price increase above negotiated final price to facilitate funds needed to pay a 3% buyer broker fee. That's just me. You may have something different, but you're giving me written instructions to do that. And see, this is a conversation piece. Hey, can we talk about the world is changing and what I need to do to get paid? Because it's my job. Is that
That's
okay?
right.
And I have to, if I can't provide value to you, you shouldn't hire me.
But even that conversation with a listing agent, isn't that call the listing agent up and say, hey, I just showed that property and my buyer relays a house. What the heck's the deal with this crappy 0% co-broke fee? I'm not going to work for that. Like, you know, we don't want to do that. Carl would have to say, you know what, by the way, my buyer has instructed me, right? We have a duty to our buyer, just like they have a duty to the seller, to ask you if you're willing to entertain a higher co-broke fee. That's all you have to say. If they say absolutely not, you say, all right, you know, if you don't mind, I'm going to send you an email just to want to confirm that, right? Per our conversation 15 minutes ago, you're telling me that you're not willing to offer, because I got to go back to the buyer and prove that I had the conversation before I can turn around and ask them to pay. Remember, you got a fiduciary duty to them of loyalty
The way you have
and
written
obedience.
the way we have written it, it gives you a way out if the seller is paying less than 2%.
It gets,
Yeah.
it gets
Yeah,
them
it's
out.
just like, but it comes back to, ma'am, I didn't catch your name in the back row. What is it? Janelle. You brought up a really valid point. I mean, I got these great buyers. They're VA. They found the home of their dreams. You know, and maybe there's some goofiness where that's not going to come together. But you know that at that point in time, you have gone through an entire consultation. You've helped them, whether it's on the hood of a car or in an office. You've brought them down that path. They know how you work. You've explained what you do. They know what you're going to do if this happens. Hopefully it doesn't. But if it does, we're like, I can't believe it, but we're into this situation. So I'm gonna strap on some armor and I'm going to fight for you. I make sure we're on the same page. You know, what I'm gonna try and do is this, and I'm gonna try and do that, and you know, let's wish me luck, but let's make sure we understand what your bottom line is. Is how you're gonna have to, you know, go to work. But which is a better conversation than saying, hey, tough luck, better luck next time, too bad, so sad. That may be the answer, but you know, it's what it is. Now, let's take a moment, let's back up, okay? I've done this a long time, and a lot of it's internalized, okay? And I still keep saying, I'm gonna make this better, I'm gonna change that. But I do have a sheet, it's like a checklist for a pilot, right? Who has a sheet that they pull out when they're working with the buyer? Way to go. It doesn't matter, but you gotta have your own checklist. What am I gonna ask them, right? In terms of, you know, LP Mama or whatever it is you're using to ask those questions, right? And so we even have like, oh, here's our buyer consult. Isn't that pretty? Well, a lot of times I never even bring this up because I've already asked them. Maybe I've got it on a friggin' napkin. Who cares, okay? But then I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna show them the buyer advisory as a part of that consultation.
That's
okay?
the opening paragraph I was telling you about earlier.
Right? It's
Vital to the process. That's
my buyer consult, the conversation. Okay, how do we educate and present the compensation process, or however it was you said? You said it so much better than me. But the idea of how do I script that? Well, first it comes down to, well, what is my minimum wage? What am I going to get paid? And I know that I have to provide a minimum level of standard, but I'm better than minimum. I'm going to be better than average. So I'm going to make certain that I say, hey, look, we may not do this now. I'm yours. I'm going to show you. Let's go look at houses. But if it's okay with you, just so you know, my broker has required that I get some documents signed that shows that I have a fiduciary to you. It's not an employment agreement. But he's also asked very sternly, and he was kind of stomping his feet. It's important, so it's a requirement on my part, okay, that I get a buyer broker signed. Your choice. You don't have to hire me. Let's go out and do this. And I did this I got a referral. It blew my mind. It blew my mind. I got a referral from this guy who's kind of weird. And this guy, he's like a physical therapist, chiropractor. I don't know what he does, but he's like, I got this guy. He hasn't found. He's from Australia, and he wants to buy a house. And I'm like, okay, fine. I can do that. I call. He goes, hey, can we meet for coffee? I'm like, yeah, that's actually good. I like to talk about it. We get there, and I start to ask questions what he wants. He wants to keep it below 5. I'm like, get it. It's all good. But he's talking about things that there's no way I'm going to be able to get that house under $500,000. Until I realized that he was talking about under $5 million, right? But you still have to have I was like, he goes, when he used to think, going up to 10 just seems silly. I'm like, yeah, that sounds silly to me too. Are you sure you don't want to do that? But my point is, you've got to have, every buyer's different, and you've got to have a process. And I know that this guy's not my client yet. He's a prospective client. And I may never get him, but I know that I'm going to eventually, with relationship and showing him opportunities, and I'm going to show them, oh, by the way, I'm going to send you my buyer agency and the buyer advisor. It's a great PDF. It's got live links in it. You may have seen all this before. It's got everything you really need to know about buying or selling real estate. My job is to help you interpret the market. I can't control it, but I'm really, really good. And if you choose to hire me, I promise you that I am going to get you the very best home at the very best price, and you're going to be thrilled. And if not, you're going to fire me. I'm good with that. Okay? But we don't do that right now. Because I'm also one that I give. I go and I waste time. I waste a lot of time.
Well, you're giving your buyer an out right there. My buyer agreement doesn't have that. Not that either party can cancel this agreement at any time.
Right.
Now,
People that's crazy. Why would I do that?
But I don't bring it out till we've been out 3 times. So it's kind of like we're going to meet 3 times. We're going to test drive the car at least 2 or 3 times before I buy it, right? And we're going to go out 3 times, and if you don't like me and I don't like you, we're done. We don't have an agreement. But if you hire me, then that agreement.
And I've been in professional sales my entire adult life, and so that's over. I've been selling professionally over 45 years, right? And so my point is that when you're a salesperson, we can talk about being a consultant and all this stuff. We're selling houses. We get paid commission. Salespeople get fired if they don't do their job. That's true. It's just a fact. Okay, so I embrace it. Yes.
How would this apply in the last couple of years with the craziness? If this was coming to play, we wouldn't even get a conversation with a listing agent to have this conversation.
Because the market was
crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
So that, to me, would be pretty
That's
hard
why
to
you
do.
What? Tell me what part is pretty hard to do.
That to get, before you put the offer in, who the buyer's crazy about this house, you didn't get a buyer broker because you weren't doing them, whatever,
Right.
it wasn't what everybody was doing at the time. Then you sit there and trying to get a hold of the listing agent. At that time, it was hard to even get
So
anyone
let's go there.
to
Let's
answer a
just-
text.
I'm the buyer's agent. You're the buyer. And
I'm gonna step
all
out.
right, buddy. Thank you so
Nice to
much.
see you all.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
I don't have to pay you for this, right?
Nope, great class, Carl.
Thank you,
Got it.
Todd.
All right, I'll see you guys at mine, maybe.
Hey Todd, since they've been through an hour of your presentation, can they show up an hour late and give full credit?
Yes, credit for it.
Okay then.
The last 30 minutes.
All righty then.
Todd, when's your class? I think it's the 8th. Zoom, it's a Zoom class on the 8th.
Okay
And
then.
again in March, so, yeah, see you. Thank you.
I've been there. I smell what you're stepping in, okay? And you're the buyer. I go, I'm on this. I'm writing this. It's competitive. The agent says there's 20 offers. Here's the situation. Is this? Hey, do you mind if I just share with you a little challenge that I've created for myself?
Sure.
Normally, and this isn't normal, and I've got your back because I'm going to do the right thing here, but normally I've had the time to sit with my buyers and explain to them how I make a living and what we do. So we're going to get through. I'm there. I'm not going to try and queer that deal, okay? Because it's going to work or it's not going to work. I'm going to get paid or I'm not going to get paid because if I'm really the best of the best, I got to take care of my client, right? I got to do whatever I got to do. But I'm going to use that as an opportunity to say, oh, by the way, hopefully this all works out and everything's great, but just so you know, I'm not getting paid what I normally get paid. That's on me, because I didn't share with you how I do these things. My broker's probably going to be disappointed with me, but I'm going to do the right thing by you. Okay, just so you know this is what they're paying me and how it works. You know, that conversation leaves a vacuum. Oftentimes, they will enter that and say, well, that's not right. Well, it's not right because you don't get the home that you love. Okay?
I
So,
really like the house and I want it now.
great,
and I
let's go.
want-
Let's go, let's write it up.
I don't have the money, actually, if they don't give you, your 2% or whatever we've agreed on, I really don't have any money to pay you.
And you know
I don't have any
what?
extra.
Because I didn't do what I really should have done, I've got your back and we're going to do whatever it takes to get you this house. Okay? I'm going to get paid whatever I get paid, and if I don't get paid, that's on me. Let's go get you this house. Now, is it okay with you if I ask for some additional compensation, and if I can get that seller to go above the price that we agreed to, maybe we go under contract? Would you be okay that once we've got an agreed price and we're under contract, that if we can raise the price, if we can get it below what your lender, I see your lender's approved this price and we're going to be $5,000 below, would you be opposed if they agree to raise the price and then give me more commission?
Yeah, as long as the lender approves and
Great,
everybody's happy.
great. So that, bottom line, you didn't get it
Are
done.
you talking about changing the price after you go under contract?
Yeah.
Why not? That's goofy. I don't want to do that. Bottom line is, you have, and this is not, I'm not telling you to do this.
I'm just
Remember,
saying that could be a trap too, right?
Like a worst case scenario, like
Yeah.
you
Worst
messed
case,
up and
yeah.
you did not see that, or like
I-
what she's saying is before we were pulling houses and we were like, let's go pull it. It just wasn't, we were fast, and you cannot look, because right now we're in the market. We should be able to do our job, look the night before, weed out the ones. If you get into that, you're going to have to talk
Right.
before you get there. So that's the situation right now.
Right.
She's saying if we're in a situation where we're pulling it in the car and we're looking at houses as fast as we can, and we mess up and we don't look, and for me, I'm just going to automatically make it a point. You check the private remarks, you check the showing information, and you check what co-broke you have.
but
You gotta make it
but
happen.
once you're in the car showing homes and rocking and rolling, you're committed.
You're committed. So
It's
you-
almost a waste of time to even worry about because you're already in the game, right?
True.
And
if
so,
you say yes, you're going to show that house. You're going to show that house.
absolutely.
But he's saying if you mess up, you're right. You have to go back and change the.
It's hard. And my point is, you're setting yourself up for you. And once you're in that environment, you're in, man. You are I guess, is it the chicken or the pig conversation?
Which
I guess.
one came first?
Yeah, you're the pig, right? They're cutting up that ham. I mean,
Yeah.
you're involved. And so my point to all of this, and this is it's a paradigm shift, guys. I haven't done it really the way I should. I'm doing it so much. All my buyers have buyer broker, and that's a little slower, right? But the reality is, I've got to, please, if you don't mind, I need a little bit of time. It won't take more than 25 minutes. I really want to make sure you understand the process. I wanted to make sure you understand all this so that we aren't slowing the roll. I've got one right now.
You have 2 online questions also.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready.
Great, but answering this question, I got a buyer broker signed, he agreed to everything, it's all good. Went under contract Sunday night. He's like, well, you know, the earnest money, I'm worried about this, and I'm worried because the lender's doing this goofy thing and that goofy thing. I'm like, I clearly didn't do my job teaching him everything, that he's stalling on this because he doesn't understand the process well enough. Because when I write on my contracts, earnest money to be within 2 business days. Dude, it's been 2 business days. Where's the earnest money? Well, I got a question on this and I got a question on that. Means I didn't do my job of explaining to him thoroughly. All right, section, paragraph 6, section 6J, my favorite paragraph, right? So, sorry to ramble.
Can I ask one more question?
No,
It's
I'm
kind
so
of-
sorry.
Sorry. What does happen? Like, Todd is 3 days with the buyer broker. What do you? When do you present that on your first meeting right there? You might have said that. And what does everybody else do?
Everybody
What's the
can do their own thing.
Yeah.
My point is, what's mandatory, if there's one thing you can get out of this class, okay, is that I am going to sit quietly with myself and I'm going to decide what am I going to communicate, what are my minimum standards, okay? And then I'm going to stick to that. And if I don't stick to my minimum standards and I'm in a situation, shame on me, right? But everyone's got a different gig, and it all depends. We really like 123 Main Street, and we got time in 45 minutes. Can we go?
Yeah.
I'm going. Not everyone here needs to do that. You may choose not to. I've had agents go, hey, listen, I'm not going to get out of my seat unless you understand that you're going to pay me they get hardcore and hard ass. I'm a soft sell. There's nothing wrong with hardcore, hard ass. There's just not. Okay?
Can you read?
We have 2 online questions. Hi, guys.
Can you read your verbiage on the buyer broker again slowly so they can?
Yes. Also, I'll go one step further. This is Sherry Travers. As I said, she's the brains of the operation. Can I give out your email address?
Sure.
I'm going to give you Sherry's email address.
Just don't give out my phone. No, I'm just
Okay, and you can email Sherry, and she'll send you our templates. We don't care. We're all in this game together. And yes, I'll read it again. But her email address is Sherry, SHERRIE, at myfirstnamelastname.com, which in my first name, last name is Carl Eisenberg. It's really Eisenberg, but I say Eisenberg so you spell it. KARLISENBURG.com. Can I borrow this again? Okay. So, I'll read this again. On this buyer broker agreement, which if you don't have it in class, go to transaction desk, pull up your template, and look at your buyer broker. Get online, look at it. If you're doing this, you should have it on your screen. You should have a copy of the buyer broker agreement. And briefly, just so you know what I do, the first thing is under line 7 in residential, land, and other. Okay, because I don't do commercial. I'll refer that out, but I could put commercial. Okay, I put new home / custom new build / I even put the word open house there. Okay, which is a little goofy, but why not? And then I just get crazy, even though I'm not in these MLSs, I get people from these areas all the time. Within the following geographical areas: Maricopa, Pima, Pinal, and Coconino counties. You may want to just put Maricopa, I don't care. But I'm like, why not? If you're going to go wandering off, allow me that opportunity to put that referral together, okay? And then under retainer fee, I don't ask for one. I've done retainer fees in the past.
That was the next question, so let me just hit on that really quick.
But I didn't read the last, okay, go ahead.
So retainer fee non-refundable, is this something we can charge up front, and where would the funds go to?
It's negotiable. Everything's negotiable. And I don't charge a retainer fee, but if I did, it goes something like this. Hey, you know what? I put a lot of time and money up front on your behalf, okay? And because I am amazing, okay, and look, I'll even get a haircut tomorrow for you, okay? Bottom line is, I need a $500 retainer fee. That's going to help pay for the cost of my of my gas, it's gonna pay for my time. You may never buy a house from me, and that's gonna be okay. It's gonna be a $500 fee, and that's not in front of, but the good news is it's gonna go towards, or you may say not, okay? But I would, maybe it goes towards your final commissions. You can do that. Other thing that I've put in addition here, I've seen people put in the retainer fee. I have to pay for a transaction coordinator, I have to pay for this, I have to pay for that. All of my clients, both buyers and sellers, I pay it. There's a transaction fee I charge both my listing agent, my listing clients, and my buyer's clients of $450. I don't do it. I've got business partners that do it.
I have to say, but with that being said, and I hate to be Debbie Downer, if everybody's
Is your name Debbie?
No.
Okay.
I hate to be a Marlene Downer.
Okay.
If everybody's not doing that or saying that, that's going to be a hard sell, and they're not wanting to go with someone that's presenting them this if the other agent's not doing this.
You mean
see
a
what I'm
retainer
saying?
fee, you mean?
Yeah, pretty much any of it. That's,
Okay.
if all the agents aren't on board implementing something like this, that's going to be set the difference between ones that do and ones that don't.
Correct. So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What I think I hear you saying is that you met with Debbie Downer, and she said that she wasn't going to ask me to sign anything. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's.
You're wondering why I'm asking you to sign that. Is that what you're asking me?
Sure.
Okay. Well, honestly, just so you know, I'm a professional.
Sure.
And I get paid commission. That's what I do. I allow you to cancel my contract. You do not have to work with me, but if you are going to work with me, I want to make sure that I've got every means available to me to try to make a living. Does that sound fair? Okay? Now, you may find someone who doesn't want to do that, or worse, maybe they're afraid to talk to you about it. But you know what? When it comes to you and getting you what you want, I'm going to do that because I'm a dog with a bone. And do you want a dog with a bone fighting for you?
Sure.
Or do you want some, milk flavored something or other that doesn't even have the guts to talk to you about the reality? Do you want the truth and everything about how we do business, or do you want to just go look at pretty houses?
I totally get what you're saying.
Okay.
I guess I've just seen some unethical things and listings.
Wait,
I don't watch my pearls.
No,
And not, it's those challenges that you come up against
I hear you.
where you're already trying to work for your buyer, but then you gotta, fight another agent for something that they said in the listing that then they didn't offer for real, and they countered you on it and took it out.
Right.
Like seller concessions, like we're offering seller concessions,
Right.
so you write it in, and then they counter you. Seller's not willing to give her a seller
Because
concession.
it's everything. It's just an
It's like a
advertisement.
bait and switch tactic,
I
and
understand.
it's annoying.
First off, it's your decision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you heard the broker. You don't have to do it.
Sure.
You don't. It's your decision, and you can build your practice any way you choose, and you can say to your clients anything you choose, so long as it's fair, honest, and ethical. Right?
Sure.
Okay? All I'm saying is, okay, write it down for yourself. This is what I do, and this is how I do it, and create a story around. Because if you write that down and you create that story that you're going to present to your people, it's going to resonate with you, and you'll be able to internalize it and then personalize it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do I agree with Marlene? You're a very good agent. You're good at what you do. And I think that there's going to be times when maybe you don't get paid what you're supposed to get paid. But I think that there's nothing wrong with you doing everything that you can to be the best that you can be and make the money you deserve.
Sure.
That's the only point I'm trying to make. And the bigger point is that without that, sorry, I took your paper.
No problem.
Apologize. Did I answer? I didn't finish reading
You
it.
gotta read that page too.
Jeez, you online people. You're killing us. All right. So anyway, first page, those are the changes that I did. And then what I did under compensation, okay, the amount of compensation shall be 3% of purchase price. Well, this maybe, but I made it probably longer, you could probably narrow it, but I said 3% of purchase price paid at close of escrow, okay? See additional terms. So I clicked to additional terms on the last page, okay? And it says, you can't just do this, you gotta have a story behind it. You can fire my ass whenever you want, Marlene, if I don't do my job. I promise you, I'm gonna get you the best house ever. You're gonna love it. Does that sound okay? Okay. So this contract may be terminated at any time by either party with written notice.
Slow down. They're writing.
This contract may be terminated at any time by either party with written notice to the other. Now, I'm going to stop, okay? I didn't used to say that. I used to say 3 days, 24 hours. I finally said, let me simplify this because I don't care. If they don't want to work with me, I don't want to work with them. Just be done, right? Prior to presentation of or acceptance of purchase contract. That, by the way, was a broker department saying, no, you got to add that. So I added this. Makes sense, right? You can't do it afterwards. It's got to be prior to, right? Prior to presentation or acceptance of purchase contract. Buyer shall not be responsible for compensation. Now, this is me, not necessarily you. This is what I decided that my minimum wage was. Buyer shall not be responsible for compensation to buyer broker so long as co-broke listed in MLS is 2% or higher. That's going to cover 90% of what's out there. Yes, sir.
So does that mean that, because you were asking for 3%, if you can't get the 3% from the seller? And
What I'm saying there is like, look, work with me. I'm going to get paid. This is what a plano looks like. It shows my buyer broker commission. I'm going to share that with you at any time, okay? And they're going to pay me from the proceeds of the sale. You're more than likely never going to have to deal with this. But I have to explain it to you. And just so you know, if they stick it to me and they only pay me 2.5%, never mind that that's kind of like what's the average these days, but there is no average. Remember, it's all negotiable. Okay. And I realize that, am I going to go after my client? Hey, you owe me a 0.5 point. You got to give me more money. I made a personal decision that it's like go with God. I'm going to do the best I can, okay? And I'm not going to hold you responsible for anything less than 2%. And they know that up front. And I tell them, gosh, I can't imagine this happening, but if it does, I'm going to bring this up to you, and I'm going to go out there and try and get more commission. We're going to talk about it together. We're going to negotiate it together so that we're all good. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Bottom line, it means that if it's 2.5%, I'm not going to go after them. If they offer 2%, I'm not going to. It's a non-issue. I'm just going to take my commission and run.
Yeah. So why don't you put the 2% on the front then?
Because he's saying if it gets up, if they offer 3%, he's going to take 3%. But if they offer 2%, he's willing to go down to 2%. Because if you put 2% on the front, then he's only going to take 2%, and the buyer will get the other 1%.
If it's lower than 2%, then he's asking the buyers to pay.
That would work.
Yeah.
It would work. What you're saying is simple, and it will work 100%. I wanted to create that.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Well, so technically, even if you put 2% on the front, it wouldn't matter because the next phrase says, or the compensation broker receives from seller or seller's broker, whichever is greater.
Right.
So if you put 2% there, if they offer 3, you get 3.
100%.
Right.
It's all good. And so, in all honesty, there's more words here than should be. It should be take your edit pen to it and edit this place. Okay. Mm-hmm. However, because you kind of said when I read that, you said, "Huh? What?" Right? You did that. You asked a question. I kind of did that on purpose because I go, "Does that make sense?" And when they look at me glossy-eyed, okay, I go, "Look, here's the deal. I just want your permission to be able to go out there and negotiate on your behalf, so that I can make the money that I'm accustomed to making. Is that okay?" Okay, and you're not going to even have to worry about it unless it's less than 2%. And then we're going to have a conversation about it before you see the house. So there's not going to be any surprises with me. Does that make sense? So I was looking for that.
That last part that says allow price increase above negotiated final price to facilitate funds needed to pay 3% buyer broker fee. That's for VA basically.
I did that back when looking at the code of ethics, and I can't negotiate. That whole thing with you used to have brokers saying you can't negotiate. Well, yeah, you can. So I just put it out there in black and white. I'm going to negotiate my commission. I'm gonna, okay? And you're giving me written permission to do that because I may get some listing agent says you can't do that. I go, no, I can. I've got it in writing with written authorization. In fact, they've instructed me to negotiate with you on this. That's why I wrote that. So
it's giving you the possibility of being able to increase your. So, like, if you get it, if you talk to the other side and they go, "Yeah, we can do that," well, then why wouldn't you get paid more money? So, at the end of the day, you also got to ask yourself, "What are you worth?" Right?
Right. So, if advertised co-broke is less than 3%, buyer hereby instructs me, okay, to attempt to negotiate, maybe you put 5%, maybe you just say a higher commission, maybe you do, it doesn't, these are just my words, okay? Well, if you do something that's different, you always get, you sending a note to Todd or to John or to Andrew or whoever you're done. What brokerage you with?
HomeSmart.
And what's her name left? Who's your?
Rich.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, hey, cool, Rich, I'm phone. Yeah, you're fine. That's all that is. Or one of the other brokers. Or allow a price increase above negotiated final price to facilitate funds needed to pay a 3% buyer broker. That's exactly the VA conversation. Look, we're going to get a final price. I want to be able to say, look, let's get this deal done. I'm doing the right thing. Let's get under contract. But I need you to know that I'm going to come back to you in the inspection period and I'm going to ask for and send you an addendum that says purchase price to be this. And that difference is going to be a concession, is going to be an increase in, I don't even won't say it in there, it'll just be an addendum. Purchase price to be X. I'm telling you that you and I are going to have a separate agreement that I'm going to get paid an extra $4,000 or something.
So what kind of document or agreement would you use for that, to get that 4,000 between you and the buyer?
Well, once again, every broker's got their opinion on how that is, but if broker to broker communication is in written format, it can be, I don't like text messages, it could be, but an email, hey, do you mind responding to me with your affirmation that this is correct? Most brokers, these brokers generally will accept that.
Here we have an additional compensation agreement. I'm sure HomeSmart has something like
Right.
that too.
Right, yes. No, I was wondering between you and the buyer, that increase in the purchase price by 4,000, that the buyer agrees to pay that to you in form of compensation. So,
well, it comes down to where is, and once again, so I don't know who asked, it was really good, like how much of this is really going on? You're right, but there's more coming. Like I didn't see it all until last 2 weeks. I've seen it 3 times where it's like 1% or this, they're getting tricky, right? Which will last as long as they can. If they can't sell the house, I guess that's going to change, right? So because it wouldn't be because we wouldn't show the home. Agents are not like that.
Of course, right.
Okay. I was so excited about what I said, I forgot what you asked me.
Between you and the buyer,
yeah.
What kind of agreement, like aside from all these purchase-related agreements, you would use some other agreement between you and the buyer so that you get compensated for that additional $4,000.
Okay, so let's say that they're only offering 1%. Okay, and I'm like, look, I don't work for 1%. I talked to you about this, but I need you to get this home. All right, so let's go get this home. Just I'm going to try to negotiate with you gave me permission. I'm going to try to negotiate an increase in the final purchase price, or I'm just going to go there. Do I have your permission to do that? I just really need another $4,000 for me to make sense on this.
Right.
All right, and so, and you know what? Because you're so amazing, and you bought me lunch yesterday, even though we have this written agreement, I got your back, buddy. Okay, let's just get this going. Okay, I'm going to try and get what I can get. That you may choose not to have that kind of conversation.
Right, but you would write that in like a Word format and then have both you and the buyer sign it, right? So that
I have a buyer broker agreement. If they've signed it, they've given me instructions with which to do that.
Okay.
Okay. And honestly speaking, I'm going to try to keep it within the transaction. So I'm going to try and simply get the seller to pay me this commission, because the way our system works right now, it's easier that way.
And the last question on mine was, retainer fee gets paid to broker directly, I will assume? Yes, all commissions get paid.
Yes.
Can you just answer that in case they can't? Right?
Like it doesn't go to escrow, when there's nowhere else to put it, you have to.
But
It doesn't go directly to the
it doesn't go directly to the agent.
Right.
So.
Every broker is different. I'm not sure what broker this person's with. Okay, I've done deals where I remember being, I think 2009 or 10. I mean, I was broke, right? And how am I going to eat this week? And I'm like, look, I'll make you a deal. Okay, my normal fee is 3%. Okay, if you give me $2,000, okay, my listing agreement will go down to 1.5%. I don't remember I remember doing that sort of thing because I needed cash up front. Now, yeah, I had to go through the brokerage, okay, and I had to deal with however I think I probably went, look, guys, can we maybe do the split at the end of the close of it? I don't know what I did at that time, but those days are not now, and that's not necessary. But yeah, all money goes through the broker. Okay. All right. So,
Your sergeant of arms says it's running late.
oh my gosh, I've already taken all your time.
Well, Todd took our time.
Hopefully this is being recorded. And Todd. Okay. So, my point is, and you know what though? That stuff's valuable stuff. Okay. And you were able to get that without sitting through 3 hours of CD. So it's awesome. Everybody has their own presentation. If you don't, you need one. You don't need to do the same thing every time, okay? But you gotta explain your agency disclosure. You gotta explain the buyer advisory, okay? And like I've got my own books, and they're fun and pretty. They even feel good, all right? But it doesn't matter. I have a customized title book, right? Because but it's all about value proposition. You've got to sell your value proposition, and you've got to have a method with which you talk about more than I'm going to go show you a house. It's a promise that I'm going to do great things for you, and I'm going to show you how to do great things, and that's what you have to. That's all of this. You asked, how do we educate and present the compensation process? You talk about the value that you're going to provide, and then everything flows naturally from there. And then you just simply go through that contract. Now, I promise to have scripting and dialogues. I am so sorry. We sat here and talked at you. That's not fun.
We had some dialogues.
We did have some. All right. So let's have a little fun here. I know if you got to go. But let's have a little fun. Somebody come up with, and I'm not going to answer it. One of you guys do. Let's have a little. All right, everybody, pick a number between 1 and 50.
42. Oh, wait.
Okay. All right.
You're in, Savannah.
Savannah's in. Can you tell she's a newer agent? Okay then. You never volunteer, Savannah. All right, now here's my point. Who's got an objection that we didn't talk about?
Well, did you get one this week when you had 3 different times you had to explain it? Did people not understand, or were they confused, or did they object?
No. At that point, they're all in. But now it comes back to I got to re-explain it to them because now we're up against it, right? And so I explained the bottom line. I reassured them that we're going to have a conversation about it, and I reassured them that it's probably not going to happen. But if it does, this is what I'm going to have to do. The one that I had at the 1%. It was the funniest thing. I had the conversation with them. I go, hey, by the way, this is a 1% deal. I'm going to negotiate, but let's go look at the house. You may not even like it, right? They didn't like it. Yes. Yeah. But I had that conversation with the listing agent. Hey, by the way, I've got a buyer broker agreement signed by 3%. They're going to need additional compensation. And just so you know, we're going to need to come to a meeting of the minds on our price, and then we're going to have to raise it so that I can get compensated. Can you review that with your seller? Are you okay with that? She goes, I'm sure they're going to be fine with that. She checked with her seller. Yeah, they're going to be okay with it. Are they, your buyers, are they coming back? Are they going to? So then it went down this whole thing where she's like, hey, if I can get them to agree to change the compensation, would your buyers come back and look at the house? I mean, it's like, it just wasn't the case, right? So,
okay.
Anything else? Yes,
so perfect. It comes back to the question I asked earlier. In that situation, 1%, you have a buyer broker.
Yep.
Does the seller change the compensation, or do you do it through concessions?
First off, what are you willing to work for? What are you willing to work for?
My minimum's 2%.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Your minimum's 2%. The plano says 1%, right? And you want to know, and do your buyers like the home and want to buy it?
I'll say yes.
Okay, great. And so you've explained to them how this whole thing works? Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you want to you're the buyer? I'd say, so there's a couple different ways we can do this. One, we raise the purchase price so that the seller can pay me out of proceeds. Okay. Right. Now that means you're going to borrow more money, et cetera. It's going to change that purchase price. Or would you prefer to simply pay me directly?
Okay, so let's negotiate.
Okay.
On the purchase price.
What do you? Okay, that sounds fine. I'll go there. All right. So then I got to go there and try and get that to happen. If it doesn't happen and it doesn't work, then this is where the rubber meets the road. Okay. And this is where that's why I had this class, because they talk about it. Oh, get your buyer broker sign, and then you're like, well, what if shit happens? Then what do I do, right? You got to have a real conversation, and you have to know in your soul what you're willing to do and not willing to do. And if they agreed to this, and you were honest with them, and you explained everything to them, okay? A lot of times, if you've done that, and you've gone through that process with them, and you're there, and the seller won't do it, they know that they're obligated.
Is there, if you raise the purchase price, is there, I'm trying to, maybe I'm overthinking, when you go to get, when it goes to escrow and it gets paid, is there a form where it says, okay, you get the
Well, the way
additional
you'd have to do it is
4,000?
concessions.
Couple different ways, yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to do it through concessions in
Thank
order
you.
to pay it, because it's a fee through the buyer
Did we
broker.
answer your question?
And you have to give
Yeah.
your buyer broker to,
Yeah.
Correct.
to the title
It has to be
company so
provided.
that, so
That's
that they
it.
can see it and they understand that it's part of the closing costs, because they.
Yeah, you
Okay.
give them the buyer broker agreement, and then you have to say.
Without the buyer broker, it is no longer a fee.
Right,
It is
okay.
now a commission, and you can't pay the commissions, from what I'm told. Maybe I'm wrong, but you're if you have a buyer broker, it's now a fee to the buyer.
Okay,
So now it can be considered for most lenders, like Todd was saying, it can be now considered a fee that can be covered by concessions.
okay.
Yeah,
So
and it's a
this won't-
closing cost.
This won't work if, let's say you're doing conventional and they're getting 3%, and so that won't work if you're trying to get more than, right?
Well, don't forget, conventional offers 6% if you have 10% down, but let's say you're only
Let's
doing a
say they
minimum
don't,
down payment, and there's only 3% there, okay?
Yeah.
And you've fought and fought and fought, you're gonna have to have one of those conversations, and you're gonna have to make some decisions on, are you going to, there's a difference between surprising somebody with this, hey, I forgot to tell you.
By the way,
I did, you signed this 6 months ago. I forgot to remind you that you're going to get screwed on this deal. That's not going to go over so well with the buyer, okay? But if you have internalized and you have this process, and this is what you talk about, and how you're doing things, and they agree to it, and you promised them to remind them when you went into negotiations. That's critically important, in my opinion. Buyer broker contract side, people get pissed off when they're surprised. People get upset when they think you're throwing something new at them. Okay, you have to have the conversation, and if you haven't practiced it enough and written it out for yourself enough, and when you're in the car and you're talking about it, that's what a lot of times when I don't have the time, I'll talk about the buyer advisory. I'll talk about this, and I'll talk about this. People don't get in cars with me anymore, so I got to do it. That's weird. I don't know why that is. But you got to find the time to have it, and you got to have piecemeal conversations, right? Did I answer that question?
Yeah.
I think I did. Okay. Anything else?
2 reasons I think it's necessary.
These 2 questions or 2 reasons?
2 reasons.
Okay.
Why buyer broker agreement is now more important than ever. Unfortunately, in our industry, there are some bad agents, and they try to steal your buyers from you. And so, if you don't have this agreement signed, there's nothing you can do.
That's what I just tell, I
Nothing.
explain that up front.
Even procuring calls is very difficult to prove unless you have very solid proofs, like photos or videos, that you can prove beyond any shadow of doubt. It's very hard.
So how do you have that conversation, okay, about, what, don't cheat on me, don't stay.
There
I
are
mean,
some,
like loyalty, just like, yeah. So
there are some agents that do this
uh,
on an open house, and it's a 1-day agreement,
Yeah.
or a
And
weekend agreement.
But
there
I
are
think
certain
you
agents who
said it
actually.
best. You said,
there
"I'm a
are-
professional."
There are agents who actually bribe the buyer. Hey, if you work with me, well, the agent says, "Yeah, I'm already working with XYZ," and the other agent says, "If you work with me, I'll offer you 1,000 or 3,000 or 5,000, whatever."
Hopefully that agent said, oh, do you have a signed agreement with me? That would have been the professional response,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
What's the
And
first
if
thing?
you didn't do your job, and they go, no, I didn't,
Yeah.
and then he provided a value proposition that says, oh, by the way, just so you know, I give 5% concession from my earned commissions towards my buyer's closing costs. Does that sound interesting to you? And they say yes, and you go, well, here's my, let's just sign here, let's go to work. That doesn't make me feel good,
Yeah.
but it would not be unethical for that person to do that.
So it happened to me,
Okay,
and the only thing that saved me was that buyer broker agreement.
okay, good for you.
Second is in the valley, EXP brokerage now
Okay.
requires all of their buyers agents to get this buyer broker agreement signed.
Okay.
So there's more and more trend of.
Frankly, it'd make our jobs, I should have told them that.
Yeah.
It would make our jobs easier. I don't let them know. I'll send a note. Hey guys, bottom line consensus with is that they would prefer that you require the buyer broker.
We won't do it
I
until you
heard
require it.
Andrew mention that they're considering it.
As soon as you require it, we obviously,
easier.
it's easy.
And then it's like, because I should never have said that out loud, because I have to admit I've used the require word. Now I have to, damn it, I shouldn't have said that in front of Todd. But now I have to be honest. But my broker requires I do this. It's such an easy way to do.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I know we didn't want us
Thank you.
online.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Hopefully I answered all your questions.
Thank you so much.
Let's go sell like 20 houses this week.
We're
Okay?
gonna go get 20 buyer brokers.
Well, we would never sell a house.